Tonight, mixed bag. Close primary races across the country lean towards Trump.
President Trump, after he endorsed me, continued to lean into this race in Pennsylvania. God bless you, sir, for putting so much effort into this race.
And abortion at the forefront.
I cannot emphasize enough that abortion is essential health care.
Plus a surge in violence against police.
This year alone, we've already had 26 ambush attacks and 7 officers killed.
All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
Too close to call. Republican Senate hopefuls in the Pennsylvania primary await the final results. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And good evening in Washington, D.C. I'm Jenna Browder. So who will walk away the winner? A former heart surgeon turned TV star or a former Army vet turned hedge fund CEO?
With thousands of mail-in votes still to be counted, it is unclear if Dr. Mehmet Oz or Dave McCormick will become Pennsylvania's GOP nominee for an open U.S. Senate seat. Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka has been following Tuesday's primary results and joins us now with tonight's top story.
And Matt, while we don't know who's going to win, what we do know is that neither man is admitting defeat.
No, not yet at all. And stop me if you've heard this one before, guys. An election in Pennsylvania is just too close to call. It's shaping up to be another multi-day event in the Keystone State with still thousands of votes to be counted for a variety of reasons. Oz had a very slim lead over McCormick Wednesday morning, but some counties wait until after Election Day to count some of their mail-in or dropped-off ballots. There's a very likely chance of a recount. In Pennsylvania, it's automatically triggered if the winning margin is less than 0.5% of the votes cast. That might mean there's no winner declared in this one for weeks. Both Oz and McCormick were optimistic on election night.
So, we're not going to have a result tonight. When all the votes are tallied, I am confident we will win.
We have tens of thousands of mail-in ballots that have not been counted, that are going to need to be counted beginning tomorrow. And so that, unfortunately, we're not going to have resolution tonight, but we can see the path ahead. We can see victory ahead.
On the Democratic side, not nearly as close. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman cruised to victory on the same day he got a pacemaker put in because of a minor stroke he suffered over the weekend.
I'm glad to hear he's doing well. Matt, another notable race played out in North Carolina last night. Overall, a good night for former President Trump and backed candidates that he had. There was one current congressman, though, who wasn't so lucky.
Yeah, it was a shocking defeat for Republican incumbent Madison Cawthorne. The 26-year-old lost to State Senator Chuck Edwards in the primary. Cawthorne had been involved with recent controversies. They included trying to take a gun through airport security multiple times, accusations of office misconduct, and members of his own party had taken issues with some of his comments about colleagues on Capitol Hill. Ultimately, Trump's endorsement didn't matter to voters in this one, as the freshman congressman will only serve one term, but he did tweet out his congratulations to Edwards overnight. So that one's done, but Pennsylvania still maybe a long way to go. John and Jenna.
All right, Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka, thank you so much, Matt. And here now for more, CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. David, so Dr. Oz got Trump's endorsement, but McCormick, he also tried to tie himself to the former president. That said, is this a victory for former President Trump, regardless of who ends up winning?
Yeah, 100%. It's a victory. Look, let's just be fully honest here. Dr. Oz wouldn't even be in this recount if it wasn't for Trump. I mean, Dr. Oz is not Mr. MAGA. OK, so the fact that he's even in a recount is only because of Trump. And we can prove that empirically. +7, +8 points. Dr. Oz went up by about that much since Trump's endorsement over a month and a half ago or so. So, look, I mean, this is pretty much a situation where Donald Trump not only won as it relates to Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania because he backed him, he won with Ted Budd in North Carolina, the U.S. Senate seat there. But the fact, once again, that Dr. Oz is in a recount, that's a win for Trump, even if Dr. Oz ends up losing.
David, to that North Carolina race that Matt was just talking about, scandal-plagued Madison Cawthorne is out despite Trump's endorsement. Does his loss point to the slew of controversies swirling around that first-term congressman more so than it is an indictment on Trump's power as the GOP kingmaker?
Yeah, look, I think so. I mean, first of all, I mean, you can question Trump's, I shouldn't say desire, but you can question Trump's decision-making here as it relates to should he have even endorsed Madison Cawthorne. But let's be clear, Jenna and John, I want to point something very important out. I was talking with Liz Harrington, the president's spokesman, President Trump's, the 45th president's spokeswoman today. She said that technically Trump did not endorse Madison Cawthorne. So the media reports, just to be clear, that say that Trump actually endorsed Cawthorne is not true. I researched it. She's actually right. He never put out a statement about it. He has made some positive comments about Madison Cawthorne, wanting him to win on Truth Social and some other places, but he technically never endorsed him. That is actually accurate. So what the media is reporting, that this is a Trump-endorsed Madison Cawthorne, is not true. I just want to be very clear on that. Having said that, he obviously wanted Madison to win, but too many scandals in the boot, if you will.
Yeah. Turning to the Biden administration and its controversial disinformation board, David, it looks like that has been put on hold in the 30 seconds or so we have left. The board got lambasted by conservatives who likened it to George Orwell's Ministry of Truth. How do you look at this, David?
Well, I think conservatives are once again not only excited about the fact that it won't be happening, but this is going to give them more oxygen to say, look, if we continue to press and press and press, that actual change can get done, even though we don't control the majority in the Senate, House, and the White House, of course. So I think they're excited. And I believe I saw some tweets about, Nina Jankowicz, of course, looks like she's resigning as well. She was going to be the head of it. She did that Mary Poppins video, which was kind of strange. I mean, let's just be honest. It was kind of strange. So I guess there will be no Mary Poppins sequel with the Biden administration.
All right, David Brody, good to see you. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Good to see you.
Well, the abortion debate took center stage once again on Capitol Hill, this time in a House hearing after that failed Senate vote last week to codify abortion access for women. Lawmakers challenging each other on the notions of liberty and the right to life. More, here's Caitlin Burt. Caitlin, today's House hearing, heated judiciary hearing comes as we await a final Supreme Court decision on the fate of Roe v. Wade.
That's right, John. You know, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are working overtime to prepare for the very real possibility that the law establishing a federal right to abortion could soon be overturned. Now, Democrats called today's hearing a chance to educate America on the consequences of overturning Roe versus Wade, while Republicans said it was just another effort by the left to intimidate the high court.
Overturning Roe would remove from women the power to decide the fundamental question of whether to carry or terminate a pregnancy, and instead would give that power to the state.
Representative Jerry Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, says the nation stands at a constitutional crossroads.
For the first time in its history, the court may be on the precipice of overturning precedent to take away a constitutional right.
But Republicans say this conversation shouldn't be happening because an official ruling from the Supreme Court hasn't yet been released, just a leaked opinion.
We've never had a draft Supreme Court opinion leaked like this before. This dangerous, unprecedented situation is what we should be discussing at this hearing. After all, this committee has oversight over the Supreme Court, and we're charged with making sure that it functions properly.
Republicans calling the hearing an effort to intimidate the high court and further interfere with its process. Democrats dismissed those accusations, quizzing expert witnesses instead on how revoking Roe v. Wade could impact pregnant mothers and even other protected constitutional rights.
Gay marriage is at stake, the ability to adopt if you are gay at stake, interracial marriage at stake. It only takes one local county clerk to say, I disagree.
Catherine Glenn Foster with Americans United for Life was the only pro-life witness.
Ms. Foster, in your opinion, is a child sucking its thumb, knowing if it's left or right-handed, able to feel pain, but not yet delivered from the mother, does that child, to you, represent a human being?
To me and to every embryology textbook out there, yes. If they're not human, what are they?
Now, the Supreme Court is expected to issue more opinions on Thursday, and the entire nation is watching and waiting to see if the Roe decision will be one of them. John and Jenna?
Watching indeed. Thank you so much, Caitlin. For more, let's bring in Jack Jenkins, national reporter with Religion News Service. Jack, welcome. A new DHS unclassified memo shows law enforcement is extremely concerned about the potential for violence once that opinion comes down, though the conversation is not limited to just the justices, lawmakers, and abortion facilities. Churches and clergy are also potential targets now. Jack, what are you hearing in your reporting?
Spate of reported rumors really soon after that leaked draft hit Politico that there was going to be a large surge of protests in and around churches across the country. There were a smattering of protests that occurred, particularly in one Los Angeles church, but there wasn't this huge response that people were expecting. However, what they did see is that when there was a demonstration in New York City outside of a Catholic church there, which was actually a recurring demonstration that got particularly big after the Politico report, there were a group of men that positioned themselves in front of the church, presumably to try to protect it. Among those men was a guy who yelled back at these abortion rights protesters saying, "It's not your body, it's not your choice, your body is mine, and you're having my baby." He was wearing a hat that was connected to a group called America First, which is led by a person who is widely decried to be a white nationalist. And there is concern among extremism experts that groups like that could take advantage of heightened tensions between those who oppose abortion and those who are advocating for abortion rights in the coming weeks, that it could escalate to violence or clashes in the coming weeks in a way that otherwise would not have happened if these groups were not involved.
Jack, you recently wrote about the abortion debate attracting, to your point, white nationalists. Can you explain more the link between some of the recent church protests and concerns about extremists making what's, of course, already a heated and passionate issue even more volatile?
Right. So there's one group in particular that people are paying attention to called America First. It's led again by this individual named Nick Fuentes. People wearing their clothing were participated in the attack on the Capitol last year. They also got a lot of attention recently during an event where Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene from Georgia spoke. And before she walked on stage, the group chanted Putin's name and celebrated the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But they also showed up at the March for Life this year. They were participating in that anti-abortion event that happens every year in Washington, D.C. And another more overtly white nationalist group, Patriot Front, also showed up there and marched alongside or nearby the assembly. Now, it should be noted that there were people in the crowd there yelling at the Patriot Front people, saying that they don't represent their views, and organizers, push back against both groups. But there does seem to be a pattern of these groups sort of showing up, these white nationalist groups showing up at anti-abortion events to try to either co-opt it for their own gain or saying that they want to be represented by these groups. And there's just concern among extremism experts that this will continue. In fact, we know that they have called for counter protests this coming in the coming weeks. They called back a few of them after was reporting about it. But there still is concern among law enforcement officials and others that these groups could make their voices heard in ways that kind of bother members of the people who are actually advocating against abortion. I should note, for instance, that the priest at that church where that individual yelled at demonstrators has actually disavowed that person, saying that they do not represent their, as they described it, pro-life stance.
All right, Jack Jenkins, national reporter with Religion News Service. We always appreciate you making time for us. Thanks so much for coming on tonight.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, a big problem for parents of the nation's littlest. Coming up, the latest on the infant formula shortage.
Well, welcome back. The dangerous effect of America's baby formula shortage taking a toll on some of the country's sickest and most vulnerable children. 2 Tennessee infants have been hospitalized as a result. Both suffer from short bowel syndrome, which requires a specific type of baby food in short supply.
Yeah, and it could be at least 8 to 10 more weeks before new formula hits store shelves. In the meantime, some Christian groups are stepping in to help. Medical reporter Lori Johnson explains.
Millions of parents are feeling stressed out, angry, and in some cases panicked as they try to find their baby's formula. Colorado mom Ashley Lane, like so many parents, was shocked to discover she might not be able to perform the most basic need, feeding her child.
There was nothing left on the entire shelf. I took a picture and sent it home, and I was like, thank goodness we have a couple cans left.
Her family got busy searching for more.
My sister picked me up some in Arvada yesterday, my dad up in Thornton the other day.
Not everyone has that kind of support, which is where the church can make a difference.
So one of the big questions that we asked ourselves years ago was, if we ever shut our doors as a church, would anybody in the community miss us? And that is really what drives us on a daily basis.
Virginia's Fairfax Resource Center regularly provides infant formula and other necessities to needy families. One supplier even had extra baby formula, which the church is giving to anyone else who needs it.
In a time like this where there's a shortage and we have access to the resources, we just want to be a part of solving that problem.
As parents try to solve the situation, health experts warn against taking desperate measures.
Parents should not try to make their own baby formula. It's a very complicated proposition, and you'll only do harm to your child. Similarly, you shouldn't dilute baby formula, same types of issues.
And exercise extreme caution when turning to the internet.
There are unscrupulous people online right now selling baby formula. Maybe it's the real thing, maybe it's not, maybe it's expired, maybe it's counterfeit, and they're price gouging. And my feeling about price gougers is they should be hung up by their thumbs.
Meanwhile, breast milk is in high demand.
Sometimes it does feel like all I do is breastfeed.
Kendall Lane answers the call as a way to serve God. In addition to feeding her own baby, she pumps more of her breast milk and gives it to friends.
You know, in the Bible, it says, to whom much is given, much is required. And so I have been so blessed to be able to provide more than enough. And so I just feel like God has placed it on my heart to be able to help moms in this time specifically.
Kendall also donates to one of the dozens of Himbana banks, Human Milk Bank Association of North America.
Milk banks, we not only screen donors in many different ways, we also analyze, pasteurize, and culture the milk in a microbiology lab, reducing the risk of transmission of disease.
That's why using a certified Himbana milk bank is important when trying to find this nourishment for your child.
Now, in the informally shared arena or sales of the black market per se of human milk sales, you do risk contamination, transmission of viral disease. You also risk exposure to contaminants, such as medications that mothers are taking that they assume are safe for lactation, and they are not.
Parents should consider checking with their pediatrician before accepting an unknown source of breast milk or switching to a different type of infant formula. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Some good information for parents there. Thank you, Lori. A rise in crime against the crime fighters. How and why police are becoming more frequent targets after this. Well, welcome back. Unfortunately, we're learning the men and women in blue are not immune from the surge in violent crime across America. More and more police are becoming crime victims.
Yeah, the FBI and law enforcement are trying to shine a light on the problem and come up with some solutions. CBN's Brody Carter reports.
We have to look at how police officers now are being attacked. They're being attacked simply because of the uniforms they wear.
73 police officers were killed on the job in 2021. That's nearly a 60% jump in police officer deaths than the previous year. Retired Dallas Police Sergeant Trey Penny is president of the National Fallen Officer Foundation and says violence aimed at police is unlike anything he's seen before.
86 ambush-style attacks last year, 26 officers killed. This year alone, we've already had 26 ambush attacks and 7 officers killed.
So why the increase? FBI Director Christopher Wray says some of it's tied to an increase in violent crimes as a whole. In 2020, murder jumped 29% in the U.S., with nearly 5,000 more people killed than 2019. Possible reasons include more juveniles committing violent crimes, increased gun trafficking, and an alarming number of some of the worst criminals getting back on the streets.
Last year, officers were being killed at a rate of almost 1 every 5 days.
The FBI arrested some 15,000 violent gang members last year. Christopher Ray says they're working with task forces and local law enforcement agencies nationwide to try and mitigate this surge in violence. Still, gun violence remains at an all-time high. Researchers for the New England Journal of Medicine found gun violence increased during COVID. There's no clear correlation. Still, some 45,000 firearm-related deaths took place in 2020. Sergeant Penny believes social media is a big part of the problem.
I've been a proponent for regulated social media because of the online radicalism. You know, dating back to the 2016 shooting attack in Dallas, Texas, where 5 officers were killed, and like I said, two of the officers were really good friends of mine. It would not have occurred that way had it not been for the social media online radicalization. Now these platforms are being used to incite violence across the country against police officers. And you have a lot of people, especially on the political spectrum, that have used this free speech narrative, saying that people need to be able to express their opinion.
In the worst cases, Sergeant Penny says those opinions lead to tragedy. Most recently in a Buffalo grocery store, where the shooter targeted black people, killing 10 and injuring 3 based on a racist ideology investigators believe the shooter found online. Sergeant Penny filed a lawsuit against Facebook, Twitter, and Google in connection with the 2016 Dallas shooting. The courts let them go. But it's not stopping law enforcement from finding solutions to serve and protect the men and women who've sworn to do the same.
We will follow the facts wherever they lead, to whomever they lead, no matter who likes it.
Brody Carter, CBN News.
Still ahead, the campaign trail led one congresswoman to make a big commitment herself. We'll explain.
Well, finally tonight, we think you're going to like this story. South Carolina Congresswoman Nancy Mace ran into a familiar face while door knocking and filming an ad for her campaign last weekend.
Standing behind one of the doors in her district was Mace's boyfriend, Patrick Bryant, who had this special question for her.
Will you spend the rest of your life with me?
Yes, yes. The South Carolina Republican considered the campaign day a success, sharing the proposal video on Monday with the caption, "I'm Nancy Mace, and I approve this message."
That is a great way to end the show.
You know, I was reading about this. She thought she was doing a video for her campaign. Door knocking.
Great way to end the campaign day. Thanks for watching.